Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So, taking a look at BT-05, we could see that BT-05 added a lot of new and powerful tools to build new and exciting decks with, and in today's deck profile video, I'm going to be highlighting basically an update of black blockers, but it could be a little bit more than black blockers, all depending on what you want to do with it, but I still think that black blockers is a really decent strategy for black to be playing around with, just because of all of the new tools that they have to be working with. So black blockers really didn't get that many new tools to just overall enhance the blocker strategy, but black as a color did get a lot of really good cards to just help push the color forward. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Kapurimon. So this is the BT-02 version of Kapurimon, and this is the Kapurimon that just gives plus 1000 for your Digimon having the reboot ability. We do play a little bit of reboot synergy and support, so we want to run this as the sub Digitama, but the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Kapurimon. So this is the Kapurimon that comes in the black starter deck, and this Kapurimon is basically doing the exact same thing as the other Kapurimon, except it's just giving the plus 1000 DP boost if your Digimon has the blocker ability. So blocker is going to be the primary ability we're going to be playing around with, so this Kapurimon just makes more sense to be running because that's the primary mechanic of the deck. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Hagurumon. So Hagurumon is really only in the deck just because he is a very efficient rookie to be running, just because he has a play cost of 2, evos for 0, and 3000 DP, making him just a pretty efficient card to be running overall. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Gotsumon. So Gotsumon is in the deck just because he is a blocker on the rookie level. You do have the Agumon that you could consider playing from the starter deck as well, but I just find the stats on Gotsumon to be more appealing than Agumon, considering Agumon only has 1000 DP and this has 3000 DP, allowing you to potentially wall out a lot of the opponent's rookies if they're trying to aggress with their rookies. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ToyAgumon. So ToyAgumon is still one of the best, if not the best, inheritable source that we have to be playing around with for black, just because he is giving the inheritable ability of Reboot. So this is really important because Reboot pairs up with a lot of our Digimon, so that way we could unsuspend them during the opponent's turn, and if our high levels have blocker, then pairing it up with Reboot means that they could aggress and defend almost at the exact same time. So Reboot is just really important for the deck, and that's why we run ToyAgumon. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Chuumon. So Chuumon is going to be the memory blocker for black, so we want to run him because he has this nice, powerful native ability where during all turns, the opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects. So there's just a lot of memory manipulation on a lot of the cards, and we want to try to limit and stop the opponent from abusing the memory system as much as we possibly can. So Chuumon helps lock that out and shut down the potential of gaining memory outside of their tamers, so he just stops a lot of their memory manipulating shenanigans. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 2 copies of ToyAgumon. So this is the ToyAgumon from the starter deck, and this ToyAgumon has a pretty decent inheritable ability that just acts as a good draw engine, where at the end of the opponent's turn, if the opponent didn't attack with a Digimon this turn, then you get to draw 1 card. So black isn't necessarily known for having the best card draw, so the fact that we have ToyAgumon to help us draw cards in the early to mid game is really helpful, because that's when the opponent isn't necessarily going to be looking to attack unless they're playing a more aggressive style of deck, but we do have a whole bunch of very powerful blockers to just also try to wall out the opponent and de-incentivize them from attacking, and ToyAgumon allowing us to draw a card for basically doing almost nothing is really good. Next up, onto the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Numemon. So Numemon is really only in the deck just because he is a very efficient card to be playing. So he has a hard play cost of 3 and evos for 1. So that means if we don't see our rookie, we don't feel bad about just hard playing him because he costs as much as your average rookie. And then on top of that, if we do have a rookie, then he's a really good card to evo with just because he has a very low evo cost. So we could get into him and off of him as quickly as we possibly can. so his stats don't really matter because the whole purpose of the card is just to be able to go into our higher stages that much faster and efficiently with. Next up, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Mechanorimon. So Mechanorimon is an absolutely insane card for the Black Blockers deck to be running because, well, he's a blocker. So not only does he have the blocker ability, he also can't attack it during your turn, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's okay considering his third ability is really, really powerful, where during the opponent's turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and survives, then you get to unsuspend it. So the whole weakness to blockers is they only can block once, but Mechanorimon's third ability basically allows him to block an infinite number of times as long as he's going to be living through whatever he's going to be blocking. So this is an absolutely fantastic card to just wall out the opponent really early on, and this is another really fantastic card to just de-incentivize the opponent from attacking with anything that's weaker than Mechanorimon. So if the opponent is playing a rush style strategy, then they really are going to have to find a way to get rid of Mechanorimon so they could at least think about aggressing. Otherwise, he's just going to clean up their entire field if they even think about trying to aggress, making him just really, really powerful, on top of which he has 6,000 DP, so he is on the slightly larger side compared to a lot of other champions in the game, and on top of which he has a play cost of 4, which is more often than not how you're actually going to be playing the card, because he does evo for 3, so what's the one extra memory to just hard play Mechanorimon versus trying to Digivolve up into him? But the Digivolution cost of 3, while it is a little on the high side, if you're not looking to get past Mechanorimon, it's definitely worth the cost. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Shademon. So Shademon is another really powerful new blocker that we got in BT-05, and even though stat-wise he's not really doing anything too special, he does have 3 abilities of his own. The first big ability that we're looking at is the fact that he is, well, another blocker. So that way we have another card to wall out the opponent, on top of which he also can't attack, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's okay when he has his third ability, which is the security ability, where at the end of the security battle, you get to play this card for free. So when the opponent is swinging into our security, if we don't have a blocker set up and Shademon is in the security and he's checked, then being able to have a blocker come out of nowhere is just really, really powerful. Not only can we use that to just stop a lot of the aggression on the opponent if they have multiple different swings, so he could act as a really good safety buffer, but on top of that, if we just need to Digivolve on top of him, we don't really feel bad because he was just a free Digimon that came out of our security. So Shademon is just a really decent new addition to the Black Blockers deck, helping with the overall defensive strategy that the deck is trying to incorporate. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Dark Tyrannomon. So this Dark Tyrannomon is really only in the deck just because he is a very tempo-efficient Digimon, because he evos for 1, and then on top of him evoing for 1, he also has the blocker ability, so if we need to utilize him as a blocker, he is a very efficient blocker to Digivolve up into and Digivolve past. And then on top of which, unlike a lot of the other champion blockers that we're playing in the deck, he also has a when attacking ability of losing 2 memory. So this is pretty decent considering he can attack versus the other 2 that can't attack. So that just allows him to be utilized in some very interesting ways. Most of the time we're not really looking to attack with him because he does have the blocker ability, and if he's rested he can't block. But it's still just really nice to have a blocker that actually could attack when we needed to. Next, onto the ultimates, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Gogmamon. So Gogmamon is still just a really good Digimon to be utilizing for this style of deck, just because he has 2 very strong abilities. His first ability that's native to him is a main ability of Digiburst 1, so for trashing one of this Digimon's Digivolution sources, then you get to gain the following ability, which is one of your Digimon gets plus 2000 DP until the end of the opponent's next turn. So what's really good about this ability is the fact that it's a Digiburst 1 instead of a Digiburst 2, so you could utilize this more often than some of the other Digiburst cards. And then on top of that, the buff persists through not only your turn, but the opponent's turn as well, and it doesn't specifically state that it has to be this Digimon, it's just any Digimon, so you could utilize this to just target one of your other blockers, to just make your blockers even more powerful than they normally would be, and that's just really good, especially since it persists all the way through the opponent's turn. It'll just be more annoying for them to try to figure out a way to clear your Digimon. And then on top of that, he also has a really nice inheritable ability where during all turns, this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, so whatever Mega we're going to be Digivolving up into is going to be that much stronger because of Gagumon. Next up, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Warumonzimon. So finally, Black gets a level 5 that can Evo for 2, and not only that, he also hard plays for 5 and has 6000 DP, quite literally making him the Black equivalent of a Monzimon. And Monzimon was pretty good at being a very tempo-efficient card all the way back in BT-01, so for all of those reasons, he's really good here, just because he is a really tempo-efficient level 5, and Black never had that before, but now they do. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Megidramon. So this is the starter deck version of Megidramon, and this Megidramon is really good because it has this nice inheritable ability of giving whatever he's Digivolving into blocker. So this is what's really good about the deck, is the fact that we could turn our other level 6s that don't have blocker into blockers, and we could even extend this to our level 7s, making him just a very powerful Digimon to just turn anything we want into a blocker, thus allowing us to utilize the blocker ability in some more meaningful ways than we could otherwise. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Craniamon. So Craniamon is the main Mega of the deck, and he is the star of the show because he has the blocker ability, and on top of him having the blocker ability, he also has the really nice other ability where during all turns, your Digimon with blocker, including himself, can't be deleted by the opponent's card effects. So this is just really powerful because it's some form of protection, which Digimon doesn't really have a whole lot of Digimon that actually can protect themselves, so Craniamon having some form of protection really makes him stand out, especially since we could give blocker to so many other Digimon, thanks to Megidramon and some other cards you could be utilizing depending on your build, but regardless, the fact that he has some protection makes him really, really powerful, and that protection also extends to a lot of our other Digimon. The only unfortunate thing is that the protection doesn't cover all of the bases, so he still can be bounced back to our hand, he can still be put to the bottom of the deck, and he can still have his DP reduced and be deleted that way. So it's not like his protection is perfect, but some protection is better than no protection. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Blastmon. So Blastmon is just going to be the aggro end of the deck, just because he natively has security tech +1. So Black Blockers is a relatively slow deck, so we need some way to try to aggress onto the opponent, and there's no better card to aggress with in Black currently than this Blastmon. I mean, there are other cards that you could utilize. I just really like what this Blastmon is doing, just because for a Digimon that Digivolves for 3, he has 13,000 DP, making it that much easier to try to aggress with, and de-incentivize the opponent from stopping him. But they could stop him if they want, because he also has a when attacking ability where the opponent can choose one of their unsuspended Digimon, and if they do, they could switch the target of his attack to that Digimon. So basically, he turns all of the opponent's Digimon into blockers, which could be both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing about it is he's picking off the opponent's Digimon, acting as some form of removal for their Digimon, but the downside is he's not actually getting his attacks through and not dealing any damage, thus making him kind of an interesting card to be utilizing. And then the other level 6 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Metal Garurumon. So this Metal Gurumon stat-wise is doing nothing too special, but he does have the reboot ability native to him, so that's really good because we could pair blocker with reboot, and that's just some really good synergy. On top of that, he also has a when Digivolving ability of Digiburst 2, so for ditching 2 of his inheritable sources, you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 6 or less, and then if there were no Digimon that you could delete utilizing his ability, then you trash one of the opponent's security. So he's either removing a Digimon on the opponent's field or trashing their security, and both of those effects are very, very good, which makes Metal Garurumon just an absolutely fantastic card to be utilizing for this deck. Next, onto the level 7s, I'm going to be running one copy of Omnimon Alter S. So Omnimon Alter S is still just a very powerful Digimon for this deck to be utilizing because of all of his different synergies with the deck. So the first big thing that we do want to know is his stats actually do matter. So him having 15,000 DP is actually important because a lot of the new level 7s have 14 or below, so he is just slightly stronger than all of those, making him that much more harder to deal with and interact with. And then on top of his high stat line, he also has two very powerful abilities. His first ability is a when digivolving ability where you get to de-digivolve one on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then if any of the opponent's Digimon on their field have 15,000 DP or less, then you get to delete it. So this is really good because if the opponent is trying to build a very wide board, then they're not going tall as often. So Omnimon Alter S could punish those go wide boards, especially if they're trying to use that go wide board to get past our blockers, because the majority of our blockers can only block once. So that's what makes it his when digivolving ability really powerful. Also, it could just be really annoying just de-digivolving one, just because it could set the opponent back and get rid of a card that we might not have been able to deal with otherwise. So that's just another huge aspect to what's making his when digivolving really good. And then on top of that, he also has a when attacking ability where you can make this Digimon unblockable for the turn by returning one of its level 6 inheritable sources back to your hand. So this is really good because we could reuse one of the level 6s that we had access to before. So it just allows us to be able to play that card again. And then on top of that, making him unblockable is really good considering the deck doesn't necessarily have that big of an aggressive push. So just having some way to basically figure out a way to close out the game is really, really valuable. So Omnimon Alter S making himself unblockable is just a good way to just get in some extra damage or close out the game with. And then the last level 7 of the deck is going to be two copies of Omnimon Zwart Defeat. So Omnimon Zwart Defeat is an absolutely insane card just because of everything this card is doing, and everything this card is doing kind of just fits on theme with how this deck wants to be playing. So what this card is doing is he evos for 3 and has 13,000 DP, so that's just already pretty decent considering most of the level 7s evo for more than 3, so that just makes him a very efficient card to digivolve up into if we want to go that direction. On top of which, 13,000 DP, while it is on the lower side for level 7s, it's still pretty obnoxious for the majority of Digimon to be dealing with, especially if we give him blocker or we utilize any of his other abilities. So what's making this card absolutely insane is the fact that we might not actually even digivolve into him, just because he has the security ability where he doesn't do any security battling, but you get to play him for free. So if he's just checked in the security, then having a free level 7 come on board is just very, very powerful. And then on top of that, he also has a when digivolving ability, so if we do want to digivolve up into him, his when digivolving ability is really powerful and really unique by allowing you to delete one of the opponent's tamers. So he's actually one of the few cards in the game to interact with tamers, so the fact that we could delete the opponent's tamers is really powerful, especially if they're playing like a hybrid deck or utilizing hybrids in any way, shape, or form, just because hybrids are the main way that other decks interact with tamers, so it also can help prevent them from using those kinds of cards to try to steal the game, or depending on the current state of the game, just deleting their tamer could be really, really brutal just because they are probably trying to rely on that tamer, making their memory very efficient to make their plays as powerful as they possibly could. So Omnimon Zwart Defeat shutting that down is, well, just really, really strong. And then on top of all of that, he does have a on delete ability of deleting one of the opponent's Digimon. So if we pair him up with the blocker ability, then that's just really obnoxious for the opponent to deal with because, you know, if they're able to get over Omnimon Zwart Defeat, then Omnimon Zwart Defeat could just delete whatever Digimon that they're swinging with, or we could even utilize him to delete another Digimon on the opponent's field. So he's just a very flexible and very versatile tool for this deck to be utilizing. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running two copies of Final Zupicon Punch. So Final Zupicon Punch is still one of the best options that we have to be playing around with, and this is a relatively easy card for us to be utilizing, and it's a really strong card for us to be utilizing because it has the main ability of one of your Digimon gets plus 3000 DP until the end of the opponent's next turn, so there's that persistent buff. And then on top of that, if the Digimon has 16,000 or more DP after the buff, then it also gains the abilities of Blocker, Reboot, and Security Attack +1. So this is just really strong because it just has lots of synergies with the Digimon that we could be playing around with. So obviously it could be utilized with Blacksmon relatively easily. It could be utilized on any of our level 7s just because after the final Zupicon punch is activated, then they're just already going to be over 16, same with Blacksmon. But we could also utilize it with Craniamon, with any of our Digitamas underneath it, or Gotsumon. So if we have Craniamon plus Kapurimon, then it'll just reach 13 during our turn, then Final Zupicon Punch will push it to 16, thus giving it Security Attack +1 and Reboot. But if we already have Reboot with ToyAgumon and this Kapurimon, then that's pretty good there. Or if we don't even have Reboot, then Gotsumon could just give it the extra 1000 to put it at the 13 to give it the Reboot and Security Attack +1. So there's just a lot of different ways that we could utilize Zupicon Punch, and that's why it's just a very powerful card to be utilizing in the deck. Even if we don't utilize the Security Attack +1 to attack with the Digimon on our turn, just giving a Digimon Reboot and Blocker that doesn't have it before, if they're strong enough to utilize it, is still just really, really powerful. And then it has the nice security ability of adding this card to our hand, so we could figure out when is the best time to utilize it if it was checked in our security. And then the last option card in the deck is going to be 2 copies of Ultimate Flare. So Ultimate Flare is just a really powerful removal card for the deck just because Black didn't really have a very good removal card until now. This still isn't necessarily the best removal card, but it's still better than a lot of the other cards that Black was playing around with before because it has the main ability of de-digivolving 3 on one of the opponent's Digimon, and then you get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 3 or less. So it's just acting as another card to try to board wipe the opponent's low-level Digimon, similar to Alter S, and that's still just really, really powerful, and the de-digivolve 3 is still kind of obnoxious for the opponent to be dealing with, so it's still just a very good card to be utilizing all around, especially since it has the nice security ability of activating its main effect, so checked in the security, it's still just a very powerful card. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Izzy. So Izzy is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, where if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just hard set it to 3, which is just pretty good. And then on top of that, he also has a nice on-play ability, where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and then if all of those cards revealed are black, then we get to gain 1 memory and put those cards back on top in any order. So this is just helping with the overall consistency of the deck, and gaining that 1 memory actually could matter during our turn because then it basically makes him cost 3 instead of 4, which is really good. Or if he's checked in the security, he gets to be played from the security, then his on-play ability goes off, and we could gain that 1 memory on the opponent's turn, thus taking away 1 of their memory, so that actually could matter in some circumstances. So Izzy is just looking to be a very powerful tamer to be utilizing for the overall consistency of the deck, and just helping the deck flow and function as a whole. And then there's still just a whole bunch of different things that you could do in the deck, all depending on what you want to gain out of the deck, and Black Blockers as a whole still has a lot of very powerful tools to be utilizing. So if you want, you could utilize Kapurimon just for another really decent inheritable on the low levels to just make your blockers that much more obnoxious by giving it plus 1000 DP during the opponent's turn. Or if you want to try to deal more consistent damage, then you have Tsunarizumon to just sit on the field for his passive, or if you use him for his inheritable, then they're both really, really good to just, again, try to push the overall aggressive side of what Black wants to be doing. And then on top of that, you also have the Greymon line back in BT-02 that's interacting with Reboot. So if you want to go a little bit harder on the Reboot blocker synergies, then the Greymon line is really good because this one gives jamming, this one gives security attack +1, and this just has both keywords natively. And then on top of that, you also could be playing around with the security abilities a little bit more because you do have another security Digimon to be playing around with. And then on top of that, you also just have a whole bunch of other Digimon that have blocker that you could be playing around with. So I'm just going to be highlighting Andromon just because he's a level 5 with blocker that also doesn't have a downside to attacking. And then on top of that, you also have another way to just give your level 7s blocker, all thanks to Bryway Ludramon. So that's just another really powerful card to be thinking about utilizing. And then you also have just another really powerful card to try to push the overall aggression with in the form of Blitzgreymon. And then you also have access to a whole bunch of other level 7s in the deck. So you could be thinking about playing Omnimon Zwart to try to res a couple of your blockers, especially if you're playing high-level blockers. You could also think about utilizing Millenniumon, just because Millenniumon has a nice on-delete ability of reviving himself on top of a really good removal ability that's not deleting the opponent's Digimon. And then you also have Chaosmon to think about utilizing, which is just another really good control-type tool because he can unsuspend himself, attack during the opponent's turn, which is basically like pseudo Blitz before Blitz, and he has piercing to even deal consistent damage. Then on top of all of that, you still have some other really decent tools. So you have access to Breath of the Gods to just give your Digimon reboot and give them even more protection than they normally would have. And on top of that, it also has the security ability to stop the opponent's Digimon from attacking for the turn. So it's just a really good card to shut down the opponent's aggression. And then you also have Mega Digimon Fusion to just try to utilize your level 7s that much more efficiently with. And then you also have access to a whole bunch of other tamers, so if you feel like Izzy's not good enough, then you could run Tai to act as another way to just give your Digimon plus 1000 DP during the opponent's turn. The only unfortunate thing is it does reference Black Digimon, so if you are trying to block with your level 7s, that doesn't work there. And then you also have Joe, which for you just having a blocker on your field, you'll just passively gain a memory, and that's just pretty decent, helping with the overall efficiency of the deck. And then you also have Takumi, so if you really want to just figure out ways of drawing more cards, Takumi is really good at that as well, on top of which his other ability, making all of the level 3 Digimon have attacks for attacking, also could be really obnoxious for them, and not necessarily for you, because you're trying to Digivolve into your higher levels rather than aggress with your lower levels. And then if you want just another really powerful tamer, then you could be utilizing Tai and Matt, just because the opponent could have a level 6 on their field, then you're just going to be passively gaining 2 memory at the start of your turn. Pair that up with a memory fixing tamer, and you're going to be starting your turn with 5 memory, and that's really good. On top of which, it also makes your Omnimons gain security attack +1, helping with the overall damage output, and you do have access to a couple of different Omnimons, all depending on what you want to be utilizing. So I still think that the Black Blockers deck is a pretty strong deck, and it's getting stronger with each passing set as Black gets more generically good tools to be working with. It just helps the deck overall, on top of which you get more and varied tools to be thinking about utilizing to build the deck in various different ways to tackle a whole bunch of different metas and situations. But I do think in the context of BT-05, the deck does seem a little bit on the weaker side, just because the primary form of removal that you're going to be going up against is going to be deletion through attacks in combat and deletion through DP reduction, which are the two forms of protection that Craniamon can't necessarily stop. So if the opponent's Digimon is just bigger than yours, then they're just going to be able to get over your blockers, and then it doesn't really make your blockers feel like they're doing a whole lot. And on top of that, because the primary form of removal in this meta is going to be from yellow, because yellow is a very strong color still, and yellow's form of removal is DP reduction, it does bypass Craniamon's natural defenses to stop him from being deleted, so it does make him seem a little bit on the weaker side. But as more and more removal cards get added into the game and the meta could shift into different colors' favors, Craniamon could be a card that looks to be very, very good because of his protection ability, and the fact that the protection ability extends to not only just him, but all of your blockers just make him a very strong card to be thinking about and not sleeping on. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.